What you may know is that 7,000 years ago, the study that they did on these Neolithic foragers, it showed that they were as strong as an orangutan ape.
Nowadays people think the agriculture in the past and in ancient times was super tough and super rough, but it wasn't still as rough as being like a hunter-gatherer, like a hunter.
So what did he lift from the earth? Lifting a nearly 500 kilogram stone is like absolutely insane.
The modern people are the weakest people we have ever had, and soon we are also the dumbest people we have ever had, because
by looking at bones, people can actually determine the load-bearing activities of these people of those times.
And they build muscle without doing anything. They just sleep and the body just builds muscle because the testosterone levels are so high.
They compared these bones of farmer women to elite athletes of today. How is it possible that they developed this type of strength and endurance in their arms without lifting any kind of near maximal resistant weights?
Like thousands of years ago, people were like insanely strong, like beyond what we can even comprehend today.
So they were running as fast as today's average pro sprinter in their hunting trip.
And nowadays people think you cannot have any high level performance without steroids. They're completely nuts.
So a while ago we had the podcast about kind of this Q&A, and it was about the video that we did of the ancient training methods. It received a lot of comments, one of the short clips that we made from it, and there was very, very interesting questions and just observations that people had. And so we thought it would be good for us to answer to those. And we already did one podcast about that, but we kind of ran out of time, and there was still so interesting and fascinating stuff from the history that we wanted to actually share to you guys. And specifically to give you some concrete, more concrete and less concrete examples about the actual strength and functionality of these ancient, let's say, people and also athletes. So this focuses a lot on the strength and abilities of the prehistoric man, and also in the ancient antique time of the Greek and Roman people, and kind of try to do a little bit of comparison here. So I think the real danger here is that people take this as a kind of a big validation. So you hear, oh, these guys back in the day, they lifted this much, so now it must mean that this is a good training method, or this kind of what proves that the ancient method works. For me, this is not the case, and I'm not telling this to myself in order to prove that these methods work. The most important thing is that actually the methods that I use, they really work in the reality that I'm in. So I'm using the methods, they work for myself. That means that they are good. So, but aside from that, it's just very, very interesting data that you can collect, and it can give just a great idea. And especially for the people who have this kind of idea that, for example, how much you lift in numbers is the strength. That's the definition of strength. So if I give you here a number, then you kind of start to think, oh, okay, maybe you start to believe in this method. So maybe for some people, this will be a good for that as well. But I think, it's very important to just go through this type of comparison. And even for me, these comments were very interesting because it got me to search even deeper. I already knew about some of these feats of strength that are preserved or recorded in the history, but there was a ton of other stuff that I just kind of dig into and found really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and what we noticed that what most people think is that they think the modern person is the strongest person it has ever been. They think because we have the Thor and the other guys Eddie Hall and these guys deadlifting insane amounts of weight. So as a result, they think this is the pinnacle of human performance and the human strength. And this is kind of an answer that people have been strong for thousands of years, and in many aspects even stronger, because strength is not just a number, and it's not just a lift. So it's a really, in our eyes, it's such a versatile topic or subject, and the standard that you cannot even define strength by mere numbers or deadlift or squat alone.
Yeah, this is what we try to cover in the last podcast. We talk a lot about this. For us, strength is a little bit different. It's the full spectrum of your functionalism. Strength covers your full functionalism actually. Even your agility or speed or even like fighting abilities are a function of strength. Like they come from strength. They're also like science.
And they come not just from just like some arbitrary term strength, but they come from like actual muscular and tendon strength and ligament strength from like different positions. Like in the previous podcast, we said that like even like agility and the dexterity and everything, it comes from strength. It comes from the strength of your muscles, but it comes from maybe it comes from your ankles or the smaller muscles in the calves or something like this. It doesn't come from the prime movers and the big muscle groups that where the strength comes from in like a squat or deadlift.
Yeah. And it's a combination of like these multiple locations in the body, like the ankle and the leg and then the core, and all these put together like create these like chains of, in a way, or kinetic chains that can be also like seen as form of strength. So that's a huge thing. But like if we want to break it down to like now looking at the history, okay, we have this so lifting as much as possible is one form of strength, very narrow, but it is a form of strength. And even if we look at that, we can still find examples that these guys were, like I said, they were strong as a bull. Like I didn't just throw it out there. I really meant that they were super strong, at least based on this record. Of course, we cannot go back to the history and like have 100% proof of almost anything, but at least like proof that is carved in stone, literally. So we can find these stones from the ancient Greek, like this was like 600 BC, so maybe 2000, around 2600 years ago. You can find lifting stones. The problem with, I think, lifting stones is that this might have been actually quite widespread in the ancient Greek, but if you have these stones, a lot of them, they tend to probably get lost. Like over 2000 years, the stones are going to break, they're going to be left somewhere. Like you don't even recognize a lifting stone from a regular stone. So you can't really like, it's difficult to kind of explore this. But there are a couple of occasions where you find a stone and it has this carved like notches where you can actually place your hands, and there's a clear inscription that a certain person lifted the stone because it was probably like a huge feat. So one of these stones is the stone of Bybon. And I wanted to read you the direct quote from the actual stone. So this is carved in the stone as a text. Bybon, son of Pola, has lifted me overhead with one hand. That's it. That's the text in it. And the stone is 140 kilograms. So that is 316 pounds. So if you consider in general just how hard it would be to lift 140 kilograms, even with a barbell or dumbbell overhead, you can consider a big block of sand. Like the notches, I've seen the stones, that you can even Google it yourself. It doesn't look very convenient or comfortable for lifting it up the air.
So it's not like a barbell which has like a very convenient and very comfortable handle. And what's even more interesting is that, or even more likely, is that these people, of course, they didn't use any like weight belts, like a back support belts or chalk even. Maybe they used like sand just to make the grip a bit better. But the thing is that these people likely were not very big people as well. What I mean is that they weren't like this 2 meter tall, like 400 pounds, like 150 kilo people, what we have today. Like if you look at the modern strongmen who are like the strongest people we have in the modern age, like these people, they use so much steroids, so much like peptides, so much food and so much everything that they become like balloons almost, like big, like insane, like a bulks of mass. And of course it makes it much easier to lift anything when it comes to weights. So it's what makes the stones and everything even more impressive is that these people probably were like just normal sized human beings, or just like a muscular and maybe bigger sized human beings, but they weren't like extreme, like obese,
they were not
borderline people,
not
like we have to
or something like
not giants in terms of, maybe maybe they could have been giants in terms of height, but not in terms of their body weight.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the steroids and they didn't have the insane amounts of food just to like stuff themselves in. So in this way, they had a lot more relative strength. So they were like in the like pound per pound body weight, they were much stronger than the people.
Yeah, that's a good point, because even if we do this kind of comparison, of course, and it's very difficult to even compare because it can be easily be like apples and oranges, because like you said, in this time the strongest men are usually the biggest men. Like the size is the strong men are huge, like absolutely massive. Of course, there are very strong like Olympic lifters also who are not like that, but I think the strongest guys nowadays, the very like strongest, in absolute terms of like amount of weight, are the big guys. So the ancient Greek, at least in average, they were not huge guys. They were not big guys. I haven't checked the actual numbers, but I don't think their like average height was like close to what we are now. Even like the very ancient Greek, I think, like if you were 180 centimeters, you were very tall already. Like my height, that would be like a big person, during those times. So that's true. And another thing, like you said, the barbells, they are easier to lift, because you can actually grab them like that. But I also start to think about this, even the technique, literally like, and the problem with looking at the stone is we can't know what kind of technique he used. We only know that at some point, apparently, he was like this way with the stone. That's it. But I would assume that he probably lifted it in the same way as the modern strongman, like first to the knees and then to the chest and to the shoulder. Because we can even, I found like a really interesting text. Most people know the Milo of Croton, who carried the bull every single day until the bull was like fully grown up. So that's kind of a myth probably, and it's not actually even a true story. But the myth goes on that there was another guy who was stronger than the Milo. He challenged Milo, and the challenge was about lifting a stone. And there was a stone that the Milo couldn't even move, and the other guy, I forgot his name, I will check it quickly. But this was just fascinating for me. His name was Titormus. He was a shepherd. And why this was really cool, because I was thinking like, how do we get any kind of reference to actual techniques that they utilized? I would really want to like see how they did it. But it said that he raised it first to his knees, then onto his shoulders, and then after, he carried it. This was in this particular challenge. He just carried the stone. He didn't lift it like somewhere overhead. But so it sounds like they utilized the exact same techniques pretty much that the strongman would use nowadays. I mean, the human physics are pretty much the same. So yeah, first you lift it onto the legs. From there, you kind of just push yourself up with the stone. So that's also quite incredible. So I think he utilized this type of technique. From there, he must have just like somehow overhead pressed the weight. But there's also another translation that actually it says not lifted but thrown. So either he lifted or he even threw the stone. So we don't even know about that.
But what is very amazing about this is that these transcripts even exist. Like we even get to get a little bit of knowledge of what actually happened. Yeah.
It's like mind-blowing to read about these things and just to make this kind of comparison. And even if you don't even need to make necessarily a comparison, just like look at it, what they were doing. But
and imagine that these people were like less tall and their body weight probably was a lot less as well, but they still managed to do these like amazing feats of strength. So that tells a lot about like how strong these like ancient people actually were.
It is, and just for reference, I also had a couple of numbers here. So, for example, the bench press record. By the way, this also tells a lot about the development of strength. The current bench press record was in the very early of the past century, so 1900s or maybe even 1800s. I'm not sure. Arthur Saxon did this record, but it was like over 100 years ago, and ever since then, the bench press record has not been broken. So he actually lifted 168 kilo in the bench press style. So you probably know when you're bending like this way and you're kind of dipping on. Probably, sorry about that. The mic was probably a bit disturbed. But so the bench press record, this is so 168 kilo of the Arthur Saxon, and then 143 kilo was this Bybon stone. So they're very close actually. And this is still the record like nowadays.
And the bench press, it's still a lot more comfortable to hold.
Yeah,
compared
it was
to the
a
stone.
dumble.
Yeah, dumble,
right.
like an old school dumble with
Yeah.
a thick, like a handle.
So, yeah, you can only imagine that if these ancient Greek people, if they had a barbell at hand, like what kind of records would they have then done maybe with that? But that wouldn't even have made them stronger necessarily in any way. The reason why they probably were strong because they were lifting this type of odd objects and the other burdens that they were carrying.
And we have spoken a lot about this, that the key to building functional strength is actually training with like uncomfortable objects, which are like very hard to grip, and you really have to work hard to even hold on to. So that's why like the sandbags, like the round sandbags and the club and maces, because they just offer so special, like
Yeah, I think it's like one of the most transferable ways of training. And well, looking at the ancient Greek time, the wrestling was big sport. Especially, I read that in the 16th century, like their gymnastics were about strength, and the biggest things were like the wrestling and boxing, pretty much. And there was some other also, maybe the pancras. But like they really it was not even the running was not even the most popular thing, which we often think about antique times. It was the boxing and the wrestling and these kind of like strength arts. And so a lot of these like grips that the wrestlers utilized, it's so similar to like gripping actually a stone and maneuvering a stone, carrying a stone. Like you're really building the strength that is super functional for this type of grappling situations. There was another number that I wanted to bring out because this is, I think, even crazier, at least in terms of poundages. So there's this Eumastas. Again, this is from a stone with an inscription, so it's carved in it, and I will read you the inscription now. This is it. Eumastas, son of Kritobolos, lifted me off the earth. So what did he lift from the earth? It's a stone that weighed nearly like half a ton, so 480 kilograms, 1,060 pounds stone. So again, this was back in the days, and it was lifting a stone. So we've already like compared stone to lifting barbells and dumbbells. Like how enormous it is to lift a stone. Like people barely could lift a barbell weighing 460 or 500 kilograms, like barely. And these guys, or some of these guys, apparently was able to lift a stone from the ground that was like that heavy. So I kind of like imagine how that actually happened. And just for reference, like the deadlift world record up until 2016 was 460 kilograms. So that was actually less than the stone that was lifted back then. I mean, now the current deadlift record is over 500 kilos. I'm not sure about the exact amount.
But they also used equipment.
Yeah, they do use the belt.
Yeah, belt, so it changes a lot.
And all of that. And like you said, or like I said, this is apples and oranges, so you cannot like directly compare this in any case. But it will give you the idea of the strength potential that these guys have. Like, I'm not sure if people who haven't lifted any sandbags, haven't lifted any stones, understand just how difficult it is. Or maybe even if you just doing deadlifts and you know like how hard it is to deadlift, maybe like 200 kilos or something like this way, then you understand that lifting a nearly 500 kilogram stone is like absolutely insane. But what we cannot know from this is, how did he lift it? Was it just like a centimeter?
Or just like a little bit lift from the side?
It could have been just like and back. Probably.
How did they measure the weight? Like how did they scale it?
Well, they didn't, but in modern times.
In modern times. Oh, okay.
They probably had no idea even what it weighed. They were just like, this is the biggest, heaviest weight here. I'm going to go grab it, right? And it was actually, I also...
Yeah, but what was the size of the stone? Like, was it like a round stone?
I checked, the photo looked round. It just looked real round.
But is it like even like possible to grip onto?
It looked like you could grab it like this way.
Okay, then it makes sense.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So you could probably do it again in the same manner like an atlas stone, but it's like just... But I still don't know, like, was it like kind of this sumo, whatever, but yeah, the strength is like superhuman.
Yeah, because we really don't know how strong people actually were, because it's possible that like thousands of years ago, people were like insanely strong, like beyond what we can even comprehend today. Because even like you had like the Saxon brothers and the Saxon Arthur Jackson. He was like insanely strong before steroids, before anything, and before using weight belts or anything. So, and he was like very muscular, but not like a obese freak at all. Like he was like just a normal person, and he was still the strongest person ever in many ways, like the bench press.
Yeah, even
and,
still.
And that was only 100 years ago or a bit over. So, like it's hard to even comprehend, like maybe 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, how strong or how much potential human beings actually had at this time.
That's very much, and we could go back even 100,000 years ago because humans were still then. And the great thing about this is, like you mentioned, okay, we go to the prehistory, which I also wanted to talk to you about, because there are actually signs through which we can tell to estimate the strength of these cavemen. So I don't actually know if cavemen is even a proper term, because most of them, I didn't think they even lived in caves. Caves were like ritual places and maybe like occasional night you spent there, but I think mostly they spent their nights in tents. But
and
anyway,
trees also.
Probably even trees. But so these prehistoric men, looking at especially like the Stone Age period. Stone Age is like very long. I read that it's like over 1 million years old, the time period of Stone Age, which is super long. But still, like the three like last periods there, we have like the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and there was the Neolithic. And when we go to this Neolithic time period, which I think was like 7,000 years ago, we can find bones. And by looking at bones, people can actually determine like the load-bearing activities of these people of those times. Because the bone is not, people think like bone doesn't really maybe morph much, but bone actually morphs a lot. So there's this kind of especially people look at these femurs, and the head of the femur has this kind of honeycomb-like structure. So there's a lot of little holes, and it's actually a little bit flexible and malleable. So if it's placed a lot of load on it, that tissue will change. There's the like harder outer shell, but inside is that kind of honeycomb mesh tissue. So all the physical work that you do during your day-to-day life will leave an imprint into that bone tissue. And when they look at these hunter-gatherers or foragers, and they compare it to people of nowadays, or even the people of the ancient farmers, like people who start to do like harvesting crops and so on. Agriculture, yeah. They can see that the bone, this trabecular bone, this mesh bone, is much thicker. It's like it's a lot more dense, and there's a lot less air in comparison to the bone mass. So the amount of bone mass relative to the air is much, much higher. And they can actually, through this, they can like determine also, and also through some like muscular attachments. I'm not expert in this, but they can like see how strong these persons were.
And they also can see the muscle mass from the bones as well, because the muscle mass pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Like I can't say like what is the exact method, but I just know about this bone thing and there's some very interesting studies that they make. Okay, the first I want to talk about these hunter-gatherers more, because what you may not know is that 7,000 years ago, the study that they did on these Neolithic foragers, it showed that they were as strong as an orangutan ape of today.
The bone density was similar or the same, was pretty much the same as like orangutan.
Yeah, strength of the bone, because you're right, it's wrong to say they were as strong as an orangutan, because what does it mean as strong as but the bone was as strong as this apes has. And that for me is quite interesting, because if you look at, or if you search from Google like how strong is an orangutan, it says that it's 5 to 7 times stronger than a modern human. So that's already a huge jump. So I'm not sure if we can say that the hunter-gatherers were 5 to 7 times stronger than a man of today, but at least certain bones in their bodies were. So,
and it's important because the bone density, it indicates the potential for strength and also potential for muscle mass as well.
Yep, but like that is already enormous. Like when we talk about that people on that time just through their lifestyle, but they were strong. Like it's not out of the like blue. It's like a real thing.
And there are like actual studies.
Yeah.
And in the study, I also know that they found that in the same area, like because they were like 7,000 years ago, they were like the hunter-gatherers. And then 6,000 years after, there was like the agricultural, like modern people, kind of. Like it's still thousands of years before modern age. And they noticed that the hunter-gatherers had like 20% thicker bones than the agricultural people.
Yeah.
So even like nowadays people think like the agriculture in the past and in ancient times was super tough and super rough, but it wasn't still as rough as being like a hunter-gatherer, like a hunter or like just a normal human being in the wild. Like it was still easy mode in comparison. Yep. And as a result, it had like a really strong effect on the body as well. And the body didn't develop as well and as strong as before.
No, and going from this, like many people would say, the hunter-gatherers, they were this strong because, they were just so different to our physiology now, the bones were bigger or something. But the studies say that anatomically, there's zero reason why a baby born today could not become as strong as this orangutan, or could not have the bones as strong as orangutan. Like, so there's you and me, like if we did this, if we lived like hunter-gatherers, our bones would be like that. So there is actually, that is insane. Like,
but even that in like a hunter-gatherer in like an optimal environment.
Yeah.
Because I think there's lots of difference between different areas. Like some hunter-gatherers, even in the modern age, are not really.
That's a good point, because there are hunter-gatherers nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these actually focus on hunter-gatherers who lived in, I think the area was actually in the US, somewhere around Illinois, current Illinois. So the hunter-gatherers we now have which are in the like Amazon or maybe Indonesia
or Africa
could be very different. Like, so I can't say like universally it would be like this way, but certainly you have a potential to be a lot stronger and a lot more robust than you are now, probably. That I think we can say that way. But yeah, about the agriculture people that you mentioned, so hunter-gatherers were a lot stronger, like you said, 20% more like bone mass than the agriculture people. But I also found a very interesting article about actually the strength of these agricultural women. So they did this study where they compared. This was it was Neolithic time bones, but also bones from Bronze Age. Sorry, but all of these bones belonged to farmer women. So women who did just like everything manually, all like manual labor with their hands, like planting the crops, harvesting the crops, probably like tying a lot of knots. And like, I can't even imagine how much different tasks they had. I probably have like a fraction of an idea of what they actually did. But because usually these studies have focused on the femurs, on the legs, because it shows so well the density of the bone. And usually they also focus on men, because you can find a lot more like bones of men in the graves, in the Neolithic graves. But this study focused on the women, and it was very interesting. And not only women, but on these farmer women. And it found out, because it not only looked at the bones of the legs, but it also looked at the humerus, the arm bones. And these women had stronger arms than the modern day elite rowers or women rowers. So they compared these bones of farmer women to elite athletes of today, and the bones were a lot stronger. Like, apparently they were disproportionately stronger. So what does that mean? I don't even know what this means. Like, apparently they are quite still small, but you could still see that they were so dense. So that is also just unbelievable that these women had such strong bones, and they were not even hunter-gatherers, but they were still a lot stronger than the current, people nowadays, or the more modern people now. Like, and I would think that like rowing, like women who do like rowing for sport, that they will have like thousands of repetitions. they will do a ton of repetitions for the arms. So how is it even possible that these farmers had like stronger arms? I don't even understand.
Yeah, but like we have said before that just a few hundred years ago, like the average person, not a few hundred years ago, but like the cavemen and the Paleolithic man, it was like an athlete just by being in the nature and trying to survive and trying to thrive. But all this kind of illustrates that I think that the modern human is nowhere close the potential and the strength of the historic man or the historic person, and yeah. And
No, but I do want to mention though that I don't want to go to this like too much like romanticizing, like well, people were like perfect strong specimen, because that's also is of course not the case. The strength of these times is not always it doesn't always correlate with, for example, health, or it doesn't correlate with longevity. So we know that a lot of these people died pretty young, and I think even like the average like cavemen, they lived like 30 something, like 33 years maybe old. So like I would be on my deathbed right now if I was a caveman.
Yeah, but the average life expectancy, because it gets lowered because of when the babies die during birth, and also because of the different freaking incidents that happen, like that some tiger eats you or something like this, and also in these historic times they didn't have the same level of hygiene.
Infections.
Infections killed lots of people, and they didn't have the emergency healthcare and stuff like this. So that lowers the life expectancy a lot. But if you look at history, of course, even in the ancient Greece, you can find lots of people who are like 100 years old.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, and in the Bible you can find people who are like freaking 500 years old. Yeah. Almost 1,000 years old. But maybe that's not accurate. But you can find like the average life expectancy, it was not because of the aging. Actually, it was not because of the so many different factors that are involved in like the life.
No, but that's a good point. But it would be amazing to see like a statistic that would take into consideration this. So if you didn't die as an infant, or like you take away these like infant deaths and maybe death by, I don't know, like some mountain lion or whatever, like, and then you look at like, if there was nothing like this killing you, how old would you live? That would be interesting. And what is like the oldest, death person that you can find from this kind of prehistoric era? I didn't check this, but it would be interesting to actually research that a little bit further. But that gives a much more balanced idea.
Yeah,
actually.
but if you look into history, you can find even in the ancient China, you can find lots of people who lived like hundreds of years.
Right.
And many of them didn't, like they were like the Preterian, like they didn't even eat anything. Like they were fasting. Like they thought that if you don't drink and if you don't eat, you can live forever. And maybe some of them did. They were just breathing.
It probably feels like forever if normal people die when they're 30 and you live until like 90, 100 years old. You'll be like, I'm gonna live forever.
Yeah. But I think the important thing here is that, in my opinion, I think the modern people are the weakest people we have ever had, and soon we are also the dumbest people we have ever had, because with the rise of AI, like most people don't even need to think soon, because the AI does the thinking for you, and that's the reason why we are physically weak as well, because all these machines and all this technology does all the heavy lifting for you. So the nature and the survival is not really forcing you to be strong as it did in the hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, and it just to mention like the perspective here, that is very interesting that this weakening happened like thousands of years ago, like when people moved from the foraging to the farming. So first, just hunting and gathering food to just like producing stuff from the ground. This change to weakening already happened during then, and it was like quite significant. So now it just continues even further.
Yeah, and it has accelerated like insanely fast in the last 100 years ago. So because I think a lot of people know that there are so many studies how the not just bone density but also the testosterone levels have dropped every year or every decade, like significantly. And just like in the 1950s, like the average testosterone level was much higher, even among like some 50 years old people. So it just goes down and down and down, and people think and the thing is that it is the result of the lifestyle, but also the bad diet, the bad habits, and the bad influences we get from everywhere in the modern day. Yeah. And like what we have like discovered, me and Eero, over the years is that the closer you live with nature and the closer you go back in time in terms of many of these nutrients and lifestyle habits, the stronger and healthier you actually become, and the more you get rid of these modern like conveniences. Like what I mean is that like this and all these modern diets and these modern foods and all this processed stuff, the stronger and healthier you actually become.
Yeah, I mean it's not like unrealistic to say that we are the weakest at all. Like I think it's almost super clear that we are the weakest. And yes, actually it's very interesting. Like you said, a lot of people in the comments, they were like, people are the strongest now. No, like, well, yes, maybe there are some strong individuals, but definitely as a whole, we are the weakest like we've ever been because of this sedentary lifestyle but again, what's the answer? We can't go back to the like Stone Age and just everyone like working with their hands all day long. But you can find still ways in training and in developing your body how you can maintain yourself, how you can maintain your bone strength. And to be honest, like some of these, even if you look at the bones, they are similar to the modern day athletes. So if you're an athlete nowadays, you will have much more denser bones. If you do like some activities from a kid onwards, you will already have stronger bones than your average person nowadays, and you're going to be protected actually against a lot of illnesses like the osteoporosis, which is like a bone loss. So there's like you don't need to from dawn till dusk do some labor all the time and become like a orangutan, but just like do some movement, athletics, like regular movement every single day. We already talk about this even in the many podcasts. And I think what is so fascinating about the study that I mentioned earlier about these women farmers, that their bones, their arms were as strong as, not as strong, but stronger than elite rowers, is that they didn't probably do any kind of maximal lifts, probably zero. It was only like low intensity, but just continuous repetition every single day, like thousands of times doing some same thing. How is it possible that they develop this type of strength and endurance in their arms without lifting any kind of near maximal resistant weight?
And I think it's because the body just responded better to everything, to every stimulus. And why is that? And it is because they didn't have the modern, like the toxins and all this stuff that was like suppressing the human body. Because what I believe is that this almost everything we use today, like most people, like the medicine and the pills and the pharmaceuticals and the caffeine and the alcohol and like all these preservatives in the food and processed food, whatever we have, it's really like suppressing the body and the potential in so many ways, and it's making it unhealthier as well. Like I don't believe, like of course, like the Brian Johnson way, who is really trying to biohack everything. It has sometimes it works in some aspects, but as a whole, I think it's not going to be very productive.
Well, this is one aspect for sure. Like even nowadays, maybe you can do some training and it doesn't work as well because you just, I don't know, you're like nearly poisoned by some chemicals and whatever toxins that come from the environment. But going just back to this is, I think like one of the big things is this is an actual methodology. Like, and we talk about this sometimes, like you do something every single day, but it doesn't have to be super hard, but it will still develop you. It will make you strong. It will actually cause an impact. It's just like because people nowadays really are so caught up in this super intensity like training method. And I like intensity in the training. I like to sometimes lift a little bit heavier or like do the sandbags and really push myself. But there is also another way to make results, and that is like through lighter impact training, even like lighter impact health training, like we have in morning routine 20xx or movements that are in Qigong. This type of, or even mobility exercises from athlete 20xx, you're not lifting heavy weights at all. Stay consistent with those movements. Do them every single day. Do those repetitions. It will make you enormously stronger. And people cannot believe it because you're not lifting heavy weight all the time. But we already, even this, I think this is one of an example. Of course, it's in a way it's an extreme example from the past because they probably did like so much just manual work. But there's power in that you're just doing something like methodologically true and true all the time, and without stretching yourself to the maximum in any session actually.
Yeah, but I would say, of course, that's very important. But what's equally important or even more important is avoiding all the bad stuff and also having a good diet. Because the thing is that if you have very good lifestyle habits and you're avoiding all the bad stuff and you're eating a very good diet, then your body will be like almost by default like strong in many ways.
I suppose. I mean, but you have to probably move. But are you saying like that kind of? Because when you remove things, you will move because you feel good.
No. What I mean is that if your like testosterone levels are high and if everything in the works is in the body is working properly, like the cortisol levels are low and there's not much inflammation and everything else, the body will maintain a good amount of muscle mass almost by doing nothing. Because like for example, there are like studies where people take steroids and they build muscle without doing anything. They just sleep and the body just builds muscle because the testosterone levels are so high. And likewise, imagine if in the past people were just so healthy in many ways and the body was working as the nature intended, like the hormones were in check, the digestion was in check, everything was like perfectly aligned. So as a result, the body, like for example, like animals, they don't really need to do any exercise or anything. They just move a little bit and they become strong. And likewise, I think human beings have the same potential, but all this bad stuff people have in their lives and the bad diet, it's already like destroying half of the potential.
That's an interesting idea. Like, I cannot say for sure, especially if we look at the past and to say that they had everything optimal or something like this, but it could be. And
yeah, but the fact that it was not optimal was actually optimal. Like they were fasting a lot, so the growth hormone levels were super high.
But the thing, for example, that's the thing that they did not get, protein necessarily in the same way like we get today. Who knows, like what were the macros or whatever? But that's another thing. Maybe that's not even important. And I don't count my macros or anything. Like people think that that's the answer to like building muscle or something like this way. You have all these carbs, proteins, and fats measured. Like they didn't even care back then. And I even read like the guys in the Greek during the 6th century BC where they were lifting these stones. A lot of these guys, there was not like a systematic eating schedule even for them. They ate whatever they had. Like a lot of that was actually bread and grains. Gladiators used to eat like a lot of porridge and just like beans and stuff like that. So mostly vegetarian. So there was like nothing was like optimized in terms of these macronutrients or there's not necessarily even micronutrients. But still, like you said, they like
because the presence of the bad stuff is way worse than the lack of good nutrients, I think.
And
because the body actually can even thrive with very little. Like you don't have to have like the maximum levels of every vitamin in your body and have every single nutrient like in massive in quantities. As long as you can avoid the things that disturb the body and the digestion and cause inflammation, then it's gonna be a very good state.
Yeah, and like the studies that we're talking about here, this I didn't read so much about the diet. These studies were focused on the bones, and the bones signify movement. So they actually they if you have the bone mass, it means that they moved a lot. So it's like this is what they focus on, and even they say like for the large part the weakening was because of lack of movement. It was not about the nutrition that much, at least in the ancient times.
Yeah.
Because if you compare like hunter-gatherers to the ancient agriculturalists, it's still like they probably had so little like toxins from the environment, I would assume.
Yeah, very little
compared to the nowadays. So at least in that separation, it was just that they just started moving less and less and less and less because they stayed on one place. So the
and like imagine the ancient guy, like why would he even stay in one place and not move?
Yeah,
like he would just stand like this, like just think about things maybe. But you can think when you walk. So why would like the ancient person even like not move? Because everything is movement. Especially in the ancient times, all the joy and all fun comes from movement.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you can watch some other people moving, but it was not like a big thing. Of course, they had the amputators and stuff like this, but still.
But, when you mentioned that, I just started to think, because just like a few days ago, I was here in Dubai. I was in the Hatta, in the mountain region. And I actually went one morning. I just woke up at 6. This was the morning when I was going to check out from the hotel, and I just wanted to. Before that, I'm gonna go to the mountains. I'm gonna explore them, and I went there. And I, it's like the most fun almost that I ever experienced was to explore this mountainous like scenery. And it's just like I can tell you, like I get feverish. I know I had to even like turn back. I was just checking the time. No, just 15 minutes still. I'm gonna go upwards. I just wanted to like get all the way to the top of the mountain. I couldn't reach that. I reached like a good summit though. I got really high up, and when I had to come back, actually, I was just, how far did I go? Because I was like, where am I? But yeah, that the point that you said, why wouldn't you move? Like if these people lived. Their home was this kind of, probably some kind of mountainous region. Some of course could be more like a grass plain or something. But if you like these environments, they almost like they call you to explore. Maybe it's like instinctive. Maybe they experience the same. Like they just want to check past the other corner. They want to see what's up there. Maybe there's more like, and the thrill that they had even about the hunting. I was just walking. Like for these people, the walking meant that they're gonna find the next what is it, the prey? Prey. They could find a big mammoth or some moose, buffalo.
And then when they kill it, they get like an insane dopamine boost, like spike. It's like the best day ever.
That's true, like that.
Like in their whole lives.
Yeah, and maybe again, who knows what their lives were really like, but. Yeah, they were certainly motivated to move, and the question of like why stay still. But that's also another question, because at some point people did stop that, and they stayed still because, I don't know what the theories are. I guess one theory is that the population grew, so it's just very difficult to move with that kind of group. So you gotta make a village, and now you have a village. Now you need to support the village. You need to plant the crops. When you plant the crops, you can't just move away. So that's just kind of starts to happen,
Yeah, but still, in your daily life, you are moving constantly, like everywhere, just for fun or just for some physical labor.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be the hunter-gathering, but it can be like any type of movement that you actually learn. They still were hunting, that's for sure.
Yeah,
maybe not walking as much as they used to. But this also this is like you said, these are examples of just the abilities and the proofs of the people of those times. And I think it's just so ridiculous to think that we nowadays are so above. Like, yes, we are above probably in the technology and a lot of these things, but physically, like these guys were hunting freaking mammoths. I don't know if they were like fighting some cave bears and what is this, saber-toothed tigers, smilodons. Like, you can't even imagine what was required for that. And there was also actually just one also example about even the sprinting speed. This was done in Australia. The Aborigines, they found like tracks, ancient foot tracks on the like mud or ground, So with the distance of these, they were able to, at least according to the study, measure that they were running like, I wrote it somewhere down, like they were running at around 23 miles per hour, which is like 37 kilometers, and bare feet and on a muddy path when they were hunting. And it doesn't necessarily tell you much, 23 miles per hour. What does that mean? But average pro sprinter runs 23 to 24 miles per hour. So they were running as fast as today's average pro sprinter in their hunting trip without the spiky shoes and without proper track and everything like that.
Perfect terrain.
Without perfect terrain. That's also, I mean, Usain Bolt runs faster for sure, but who knows what was their maximum speed. But again, just the athleticism of these people from living, just through living their life. It was not, they were not doing sports. That's insane.
And the key was the daily movement, versatile movement, functional movement, and absence of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And the diet is not, it's important, but it's not, the diet is actually absence of bad stuff. Good diet is the absence of bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Good diet is not that you drink green tea every day for 10 cups and then you take 500 different supplements and then you eat the most nutrient-dense food every single day. No, I think the most perfect diet is the absence of bad stuff.
Absence of bad stuff.
Yeah, and then of course you have to have the nutrients, but it's not in the maximal range or every day all the time.
No, and it would. I mean, man, it's so crazy even nowadays, like how little I care about that stuff compared to, because we lived.
Yeah, 10 years ago we were
part of.
I was stuffing myself with everything.
Like we were in the heart of that. I was just like through iHerb, I was just like ordering this and that pill. Like, I don't know, like I feel much better nowadays when I don't take any of that, and I probably don't have even as much some of those whatever nutrients in my body. Like it's nonsense. I just avoid the crap, avoid the really bad stuff, and you already like
you will be the healthiest version of yourself when you fast, when you get rid of everything. Like 10 days of fasting, then you're like your growth hormone levels are high, your inflammation is at minimal levels.
Yeah.
And
so what people a lot don't realize is that even their disease, the sickness that they have, is because of they being consuming.
Yeah, because you are feeding the disease, you are feeding the cancer cells, you are feeding tumors, you are feeding like everything you eat, you are giving to the bad stuff as well.
Yeah, and now you're trying to fix the disease by consuming more. You know, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's a very good point. But like I said, I mean, this is super interesting data for me personally, just to look at it. But I still don't, this is not like now the guys think that they are not strong because they were not lifting weights. Like even if there was no record of these Greek guys lifting or whatever, I wouldn't care. Like you have to understand that any method, in any case, you need to do yourself. But for sure, now you have an idea also that the people of the past time did showcase like super elite level athleticism without ever even trying to get that. So that's, I think, is remarkable, and just maybe it creates more faith for you to also live a more natural lifestyle.
And nowadays people think you cannot have any high level performance without steroids. They're completely nuts.
That's a good ending.
Yeah, so that's it.
That's it. All right. Thanks, guys, and stay strong.